Never seen them in my life.
So it's from the Royal Mint, so the same place that all legal tender comes from.
Have you got any other means of payment at the minute?
I don't know. Right. Can I ask why you didn't tell me before you started recording?
So when we go to any incident, our tour of duty and our police protocol is to video every incident we go to achieve the best evidence.
But you've got to notify the person at the first available opportunity.
No, we don't.
You do.
Have you got that from somewhere? Have you read that up somewhere? Or?
Yes, your policy. Yeah.
Okay. Well, at the minute, we're obviously videoing everything because we've been called to an incident. Immediate response where there's some ongoing issue with payment, whether it's a domestic...
999?
Well, that's what's coming as, yeah.
Wow.
Well, we just didn't know what was happening. There was an altercation in the shop, so we've arrived on that instance. Are you going to give me your name?
I'm not, no.
Right, okay. Because is there a reason for that?
Because it's a civil matter, and it's not something that the police can get involved in.
To a degree, you're right. It is a civil matter. We can deal with it a different way, but obviously, ultimately, you haven't paid.
From the moment the officer arrives, it's immediately clear the situation is being mishandled. The auditor quickly notices the body-worn camera and asks a simple, reasonable question. Why wasn't he informed that recording had begun? Standard police protocol requires officers to disclose this as soon as practicable. Yet instead of acknowledging the oversight, she dismisses the rule entirely, an alarming response that raises serious concerns about her understanding of basic procedure. The situation escalates further when she demands the auditor's name. At this point, the interaction is nothing more than a civil disagreement between a customer and a business. No crime has been alleged, and no legal threshold has been met to justify such a request. In these circumstances, there is no lawful basis to compel someone to identify themselves. This leaves only two possibilities. Either the officer lacks a fundamental grasp of her legal authority, or she knowingly chose to ignore it. Both scenarios are deeply troubling and entirely unacceptable for someone entrusted with the responsibilities of professional policing.
But they're not accepting that money.
But that's up to them to accept it. If they decline...
They've obviously run the post office and they've declined that. Ultimately, it's a civil issue, but if you're not willing to give us your details, then how do we know that you're going to resolve the civil issue at a later date? If you're happy to give us your details, then we can look at the civil issue at a later date.
But that's a civil issue. That's nothing for the police to get involved in.
But we don't know your details, do we? So you could technically escape from here and never come back and never deal with that issue. Then you'd be circulated as wanted for that, won't you, for making off without payment?
That's not a police issue at the minute.
It is. It is a police issue because you've not paid for fuel. So there's still an offence there of that you've not paid for your fuel.
But I have paid. I've gave them.
But you've gave them this coin, yeah, which ultimately they've spoke to the post office and they've decided that it's not a reasonable amount of payment for your fuel. So at the minute we're sort of hands are tied, yeah. Agree with you on a certain instance of that, but we still need a solution today. Whether we take your details and we deal with it at a later date.
The officer clearly acknowledges, using her own words, that this is nothing more than a civil dispute between two individuals. Yet moments later, she attempts to manufacture authority that simply doesn't exist, claiming she can demand identification in order to resolve it later. That's not how policing works. When no crime is suspected, there is no legal basis to compel someone to provide personal information. She goes even further by trying to transform a private disagreement over payment into a police matter, simply because the business owner is dissatisfied. But frustration alone does not create legal authority. The situation crosses a serious line when she threatens that the auditor could be placed on a wanted list, a statement that is entirely false. Such lists are reserved for criminal matters, such as individuals with active warrants or those who have failed to appear in court, not for contractual disagreements or payment disputes. By invoking the threat of criminal consequences to pressure compliance, she reveals a troubling misuse of authority. In fact, this moment exposes a core issue. If she genuinely believed a crime had occurred, she would need to demonstrate clear elements such as intent to deceive, refusal to pay, or an attempt to evade payment. None of those factors are present here. The auditor remained on site, attempted to pay with legitimate currency, and merely disagreed over the form of payment being accepted. That is unmistakably a civil matter, not a criminal one, and the officer's actions reflect a serious departure from proper legal standards.
Basically, he's trying to pay with this. They've run the post office and said that it doesn't really exist, you can't pay with that. No. He obviously won't give us our details. I've explained to him to a degree it's a civil matter, however, If he does make off and he doesn't give us our details, we're struggling for any sort of civil issue at a later date. Any details and making off without payment, yeah. So I've explained if he does give us his details and we know where he is and we can contact him at a later date, hopefully this issue can get resolved. No. He's obviously not really wanting to do that at the minute.
Because it's a civil issue and it's nothing for the police to get involved in.
But you're still going to make off, aren't you? Technically without payment, but if we can get your details...
But I have paid.
But you haven't...
And it is their policy to accept the £20 coin.
Has he
paid?
Policy?
No, he hasn't.
Right, if you haven't paid, and if you walk out the door now...
They've still got the money though.
Just let me finish. If you walk out that door now, you are liable for an arrest because we don't have your details.
But you don't need them.
Well, I do.
Because it's a civil issue.
But it's not, because a make off without payment is an...
When the second officer arrives, the situation quickly deteriorates. Instead of assessing facts, she immediately threatens arrest, a reaction that is both premature and legally unfounded. The auditor remains inside the store the entire time, openly discussing the payment issue. There is no attempt to leave and no indication of avoiding payment. Simply put, the essential elements of a criminal offense are not present. What makes the threat even more unreasonable is that the auditor had already attempted to pay using a legitimate £20 coin issued by the Royal Mint, currency that was refused by the cashier. This alone demonstrates clear intent to settle the transaction, not evade it. Under the Theft Act, a charge such as making off without payment requires two key elements. The individual must leave the premises, and they must do so with the intention of not paying. In this case, neither condition is met. The auditor stayed on site and made a genuine effort to pay, disputing only the form of payment accepted, by escalating the situation into a criminal matter. Seemingly in response to the auditor declining to provide personal details, the officer exposes a serious misunderstanding of the law she is sworn to enforce.
If you walk out that door now, you know it is. If you walk out that door now, you'll be getting arrested for make off without payment.
But there is an agreement with BP that the coin can be used.
Is there any other way that you can pay? Because we're going to sit here for hours arguing. I've been quite respectful to you. I appreciate you have to a degree, and I appreciate that from yourself. You haven't been argumentative with me, and I appreciate that you've been a normal human being.
No,
however, we need
I don't intend to. No,
I appreciate
if you
that.
can pay for the fuel now by other means, then that's fair enough. It'll be the end of the matter.
Or if you can give us your details, and we can deal with it at a slower time, we can offer you that. But if you're not willing to do either any, then we're struggling with what we have left to do.
Because we can't let you walk out that door without paying. But
we don't know where you live. You might not even be from around here. I'm not saying you are, but you know what I mean. We have people where they'll make off and then they won't give us our details, and then we're going to struggle. I'm still going to have that £20 of fuel, unfortunately, with this BP garage outstanding.
Which car is it?
But I have paid for the fuel.
But you haven't paid for the fuel. Which one?
Right, we're going round in circles, aren't we?
We are, unfortunately, yeah. We've agreed, we've reasoned with you now, and we've tried to say that if you give us your details, just tell you where you live, we'll deal with it slow time. However, you then leave, you don't have your details, you don't know where you live, you could live in London for all we know, and then there's still this making off without payment because they will not accept this as payment.
But I don't have to identify for a civil issue.
It technically isn't a civil issue though, is it, when you leave and you don't pay? You haven't paid for your fuel. We've got the payment here, which isn't acceptable, so really you haven't paid at the minute.
The entire situation unravels around a scenario that doesn't actually exist. The officers repeatedly warn the auditor about the consequences of leaving without paying, as if he's on the verge of running out. Yet that moment never comes. He remains inside the store the entire time, calmly engaging in conversation, and having already attempted to pay with a legitimate Royal Mint coin. In reality, the officers aren't responding to his actions. They're reacting to a hypothetical situation they constructed themselves. That's not law enforcement. That's speculation driving escalation. Equally flawed is a claim that they cannot identify him without forcing him to produce ID. His vehicle is parked outside, and the license plate provides a straightforward, lawful means of establishing identity if it were genuinely necessary. Instead of using that practical option, they ignore it entirely and continue insisting on demands they have no legal authority to enforce. By turning a simple civil disagreement over payment into grounds for arrest, the officers don't resolve the issue, they amplify it. What could have remained a minor dispute is instead escalated into a far more serious and unnecessary confrontation, driven not by facts, but by assumption and overreach.
Because I've handed the coin over, right. So I haven't got that in my possession, and I've contacted BP head office before coming here.
Right, and was that today then, or?
No.
So when was that then? So you've contacted BP head office before you've come in?
Correct.
Right, so did you contact them today, or was it yesterday, or last week, or?
It's not up to me to say that.
How's it money?
Do you understand what the £20 coin is?
No, that's why I'm confused.
Well, why are you threatening me for arrest then, if you don't know?
Because it's not money.
It is.
Right. We'll agree to disagree. At the end
you
of
don't know that. It is. It's
Right.
legal tender, the same as a £20 note and a £10 note.
Right, and who did you speak to from the the BP garage, the manager?
It's a Royal Mint who issued that £20 coin.
Right, okay.
So it's the same money as any other money.
If you get someone on the phone to me who you've spoken to earlier, then we can kind of end the matter here, can't we?
But if it's a civil
you're not
issue, I
going
don't need
but
to
at the minute
assist you.
But at the minute we don't know it's a civil matter.
But I don't need to assist you in a civil issue.
But you do, because it then turns into a police matter because we...
The auditor had already gone beyond what was reasonably required by presenting clear evidence that BP's own policy recognized the coin as valid payment. That alone should have resolved the issue immediately. Instead, the officer escalates the situation by turning it into a demand, insisting that he personally call BP headquarters to prove it or face potential police action. This is both unreasonable and legally unfounded. There is no obligation for a citizen to assist officers in that manner, and refusing to make a phone call does not constitute a crime. Policing is built on assessing facts and applying the law, not shifting the burden onto individuals to prove their innocence or perform investigative work on behalf of officers. When the officer dismissively states, "We don't know that coin," it further undermines her position. A £20 coin issued by the Royal Mint is official legal currency in the UK. A lack of recognition or understanding on the part of the officers does not invalidate the payment. It simply highlights a gap in their knowledge. At this point, the responsibility lies entirely with the officers. Their failure to recognize legitimate currency, combined with their insistence on unlawful demands, transforms what should have been a straightforward resolution into an unnecessary and unjustified escalation.
Civil agreement.
Of being arrested because you haven't given us his details and you're going to walk out that door and it's technically a failure to pay.
But then it'll be a civil. But then I'll sue you.
Well, that's fine. If you want to sue us, that's fine.
Unlawful arrest.
Like I said, we've been honest with you and out in terms of which way we can go. The staff here have been very honest. Okay, and all I'm saying is, if you get the person on the phone who you spoke to earlier with the agreement, then that could be the end of the matter. But as far as I do, then technically, if you walk out the door, it's going to be a make without payment.
He's already accepted to take it.
You haven't accepted to take it. No, haven't accepted to take it. You walk out that door, becomes a criminal matter, and you get arrested for make off without payment.
Or you give us your details.
You're refusing to give us your details, and we don't know that vehicle is yours because you're not.
But I've told you.
Is it urgent?
That he said he would take the coin.
But he isn't.
If I take my mask off.
Right, well I wasn't here for that, so we have no witnesses, unfortunately, other than you and him. Right now I can't view that.
Body camera.
But right now I can't view that. At the end of the day, you've come in, you've paid for you've got your fuel, you've come in. This isn't a payable matter. Once you leave, we've offered you to give us your details and deal with it that way. For all I know, that vehicle could be registered to somebody else and lived in London. And how are we ever going to trace you?
But I don't need to assist you.
Situation, it is making off without payment. I can't be any more reasonable with you and give you some sort of options that we can go.
But I don't need to assist you.
Are you offering to give
Because
the
you're
staff,
wrong.
not myself, not my colleague, the staff your name and contact number?
No.
Right, so we have one option but two will lock you up then.
Well, I've got a civil agreement in the background.
You can prove that at court. Prove that at court.
That's fine, you can prove that at court.
Right, well this moment in time, you're currently under arrest for making off without payment. You don't have to say anything,
but I haven't made off.
We don't mention one question to the little line. Or anything you do is to make a different evidence.
But I haven't made off though.
For your arrest is prompted in fact investigation. Okay?
But I haven't made off.
You're under caution as well.
And due to the fact you failed to provide details.
But I haven't made off.
Failed to provide details, yeah.
But I haven't made off.
Right, are we going to go calmly? We're going to go quietly?
We would go calmly all the time.
Okay, well, do you want to walk with us then?
Of course.
Thank you. Just come with me, sir, please. Have you got anything in your pockets that's going to harm me or you? Just take them out. It's just a question we ask everybody.
Can we just take your camera off as well, please?
This is a turning point, where the situation shifts from mere incompetence to clear abuse of power. The officers proceed to arrest the auditor for leaving without payment while he is still standing inside the store, calmly stating the obvious: "I haven't left." That single fact should have brought everything to an immediate halt. The alleged offense simply cannot exist under these circumstances. By definition, it requires a person to physically leave the premises and intend to avoid payment. Here, neither element is present. The auditor remained on site the entire time, actively engaged in resolving the dispute, and had already attempted to pay using legitimate currency. There was no departure, no evasion, no crime. Despite this, the officers moved forward with the arrest anyway, a decision that is exceptionally difficult to justify under any legal standard. The law is clear. Both conditions must be met for such an offense to apply. In this case, neither was. What makes this moment particularly serious is that the absence of a crime is not subtle or open to interpretation. It is obvious, yet the arrest is carried out regardless, raising significant concerns about the officer's judgment and use of authority. Now, the situation moves beyond the incident itself, as the auditor, known as Auditor I Spy, provides an update on the legal action he has taken in response.
About 10 months ago, I walked out of those gates after being falsely arrested for using the £20 coin. The Chief Constable has paid out £4,000 in compensation, but unfortunately he did not apologise at any point, even taking him to court. He went all the way to court, we had the hearing date, and then the Chief Constable saw some sense and paid £4,000 in compensation, but no apology.
The case ultimately went to court, and the outcome speaks volumes. The auditor was awarded £3,999 in compensation, along with full legal costs. For an incident that should never have escalated beyond a simple disagreement, that is a significant payout. More importantly, it underscores just how weak and indefensible the officer's actions were once subjected to proper legal scrutiny. Faced with that reality, the force had little choice but to settle. What makes this even more troubling is what didn't happen next. According to the auditor, the Chief Constable, the individual responsible for leading the entire force, never issued a single apology. Public funds were used to pay thousands of pounds in compensation, effectively acknowledging wrongdoing. Yet there was no admission, no accountability, and no effort to make things right. That silence is revealing. It suggests a culture where protecting institutional reputation takes priority over transparency, responsibility, and public trust. This case is a powerful example of how even the smallest situations can spiral into serious misconduct when officers fail to understand, or choose to ignore, the law they are sworn to uphold. What began as a minor disagreement over a coin, something that should never have required police involvement, ended in an unlawful arrest. Not because of necessity, but because ego and control overtook judgment and common sense. Even more concerning is how the justification for that arrest seemed to evolve in real time. The officers repeatedly relied on a hypothetical scenario. What if you leave without paying, despite no indication that the auditor intended to do so? In effect, they built their entire case around an imagined outcome, using speculation as a substitute for evidence. That is not law enforcement. It is a distortion of reality to justify authority. This behavior points to a deeper issue, one where intimidation becomes a shortcut for proper policing. Instead of resolving the matter calmly, with patience and a clear understanding of the law, the situation escalated rapidly to threats, detention, and ultimately arrest. When fear replaces facts, the damage extends far beyond a single incident. It erodes public confidence in the entire system. Because if this can happen over something so minor, it raises a much bigger question. Where does it stop? And then comes a final blow. After everything, nearly £4,000 of taxpayer money is paid out, yet not a single word of apology is offered. That silence doesn't just reflect poor judgment. It signals a willingness to cover mistakes with money rather than confront them and implement change. It reveals priorities that favor image over integrity and reputation over reform. That's it for today's video. If you found this breakdown insightful, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It truly helps support independent content like this. And be sure to check out I Spy Audit, linked in the description, to show your support. Thanks for watching. This is Candid Cops, and I'll see you in the next one.